I am a puppy development coordinator along with Melissa Raymond, who's in the chat room, and Barry Lynn Wood. Many of you have not yet met Barry Lynn. She is brand new to our department, so warm welcome to her, and she's going to be doing the recording today. And Barry Lynn, you can feel free to jump in if you need to as well. We're going to talk about park training or potty training today. You can see the dogs using the urinal, not really what we're going to get to, not to the point we're going to have that, but we're hoping to get at least our dogs house trained and have some good ideas tonight. Where do we start? So where do we start with the whole idea of potty training or park training? You might call it housebreaking as well. The puppies do not have a lot of control prior to 6 weeks of age. So this actually doesn't start necessarily in our host homes, although some of them do some potty training, some aspects of it. They're not required to. So it really doesn't start much before you pick up your puppy. But it does start right from when you leave leader dog. A lot of people, there are designated park areas on campus that are pea gravel, and most people will go to those park areas and park their puppy before getting in the car to go home. So that's exactly when it starts. You pick up your puppy and house training starts almost immediately. But most puppies do not have a tell. So they don't really tell us, a lot of people will say, my puppy won't tell me when he has to go potty or go out to park. And so it really is our responsibility to take the puppy out frequently enough and to be observant enough to see when they need to park. Crate training and potty training, housebreaking kind of go hand in hand. It is one of the reasons that we recommend a crate. It's not the only reason, but definitely you're going to want to have a crate to help you with this. Good crate size would be 36 to 42 inches, typically with a divider if needed. That is the size of the crate for an adult dog. So that's why we would use the divider, is to make that area a little bit smaller for our puppies so they're not pottying or parking on one end of it and then sleeping on one end of it. You may need to use a divider. Some puppies are already very good at this. Others are not. So we use the same technique with everybody, and then that way we have some consistency to help us to follow. You also want to have other contained areas like X-pens and baby gates. And the reason for this would be that freedom, whether it be for general house manners in terms of chewing and chewing things up, and housebreaking, freedom is earned. So if your puppy can hold it a little bit longer, or maybe you're having a lot of potty success, they can start to go to other areas of your home. If not, going back to containment sometimes is the way to go. So if you start to experience maybe a lapse in housebreaking, you can always go back to making their area small. In my particular house, we have our carpeted areas gated off to make it less likely for our puppy to pee on the carpet. And we have a hardwood room area where we have it set up with some baby gates that is very puppy proofed for them. So if they do have an accident, it's easy for us to clean up. And we found that that's the easiest way. And then we can move them, the gates open, so we can have them in our kitchen, which is tile. And once they've kind of got the hang of not going so much in the front room, then we offer them the kitchen. And once they have that down pat, then we open up the divider to our carpeted living room area with them. So we've kind of built a little system that helps us. I put a little sample of an X-pen setup for the waking hours of your puppy. This puppy has a crate to go into, there's a couple of toys, and there's a water dish for them. So this would just be an example of having a small contained area. Some of you will say, well, you have a very open floor plan of a home style that makes it difficult for blocking off areas. And if that's the case, here's just a little example of how you can use an X-pen. That would be a helpful place to have your puppy during those waking hours, during the time when you can't really watch them. This would be a good example of a place they could stay. So the first thing we have to do is kind of create a plan. Like, how are we going to manage this? And it's great if you're joining us and you don't have a puppy yet, you can start to create your plan before they even come home. So a puppy can hold it for as many hours as they are months old, +1. So we get an 8-week-old puppy, and they can hold it in a crate for about 3 hours. They're 2 months old approximately when we get them. +1 is 3. During the night, most do not have to relieve themselves. They might in the very beginning, but this doesn't really apply overnight as quite as much. So you can expect that if your puppy is sleeping through the night, then you've got you can just count your blessings, really, because puppies sleeping through the night is one of those things that people really struggle with. Sometimes it's related to house training, sometimes it's not. When you do have your puppy who may want to relieve at night, they go out, you take them out in a very, very calm manner. You'll take your puppy out, then you will put them right back in the crate again, so it's a non-event. We don't play during park time in the middle end of the night hours. So another thing with creating a plan is that, so that would be the kind of the crating aspect of it. But then what do you do when they're outside of the crate? So you're going to plan to take your puppy out once every hour. And I know this seems like a lot. This seems very overwhelming for a lot of brand new raisers or brand new dog owners even really struggle with this. You're also going to take them out after eating, after sleeping, and during play. And I say during play because it's very unlikely that your puppy will all of a sudden stop playing with you and then park. They'll usually be playing, and they're so interested in the play that they forget all about listening to their bodies and having to go out to park. Very similar to your toddlers. If you've ever had to potty train your children, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, that they get to playing and they just forget. So that's why we take them out during play. I always say, do not wake a sleeping puppy to park. So if your puppy is sleeping, don't wake them up thinking, a lot of people will say, well, I need them to park every 3 hours at night. Not necessarily. Your puppy will give you an indication of whether or not they need to park at night. They might wake up, they might howl, they might whine in their crate a little bit. That would be a time I would start to take them out at night. But if they are sleeping at night, there's no need to take them out. There's also no need to really wake them during the day if they're having a nap in their crate or in their pen or otherwise. Not to wake them to go out to park unless you're planning on leaving the house and we have to have a park time soon. Sleeping puppies, just allow them their sleep. You won't regret that at all. Here would be a sample plan if you're planning on house training your puppy, potty training your puppy. You would wake up and park the very first thing. So at just puppies, just like us, they need to go relieve themselves just as they wake up. That's why I said we don't necessarily want to wake them, because then we know we're going to have to take them out to park. Then your puppy might have breakfast. Then, of course, we said after eating would be another park break. Then they might have some playtime in their crate or X-pen or their confined area. Then if they're playing, don't forget, if they're playing, then they need another park break. So if you have that happen, you may need to park them in between. And then around 8 a.m. they would have a nap, and then park time would follow the nap. And so I know this seems, like I said, kind of excessive, but the idea behind it is to prevent potty accidents. Because remember, puppies are good at what they practice. And if they practice going outside all the time, they're going to go outside more often. They're going to become more reliable with that behavior. I included this little puppy potty chart because it's very important also, if you're really struggling, the very first thing that I will recommend for you is, are you logging it? Are you keeping track? Are you writing it down, or are you logging it in your phone? We'll get we're going to go through a little ways you can do that later on, but are you really, is it that he's having an accident every 5 minutes, or is it every 2 hours and we think it's every 5 minutes? It might seem like it's more than what it is. It also might seem that it is less than what it is if you're tracking it, but we get a realistic view. And also, if you're having problems and you need to see the vet, you're going to be able to say, well, he parks every 15 minutes. And so the vets are going to need to know that information. So it's kind of important that maybe in that first little bit that you actually track your pottying in some way. So there's a process with parking. And the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your puppy to the designated parking spot. So in my yard, it happens to be the front yard. Whenever the dogs park, they go out the front door. And I keep that very, very consistent because when you think about it, and I want them to start to tell me that they have to park, I want them to start going to that particular door. And my dogs get very, very good at it. They know exactly what's happening when they go out the front. They know exactly what they're going to be doing because we don't use that door very often. And it becomes our kind of our park door that they go to. And I have a spot in my front yard that they always use. You're going to unclip the leash to full length if you're able to use a leash. If you have a fenced-in backyard, that's absolutely fine. Your puppy can park off leash. But I will tell you, they need to learn how to park on leash. And so that is a skill that they're going to need eventually, especially when you start going out in public. So you might as well start now. You might as well start the on-leash parking. You're going to say go park or just park. Either one of those would be completely acceptable, but you're going to say that word. The reason we say the word is because we put that behavior on a verbal cue. That way, when you need them to eliminate, you're going to be able to say go park, and that's what they know to do. My puppy is, I will tell you, this one more so than any of the puppies I've had, he really knows what that word means. He will park anywhere, anytime that I tell him the verbal cue park. But we've been very, very consistent about it. He's 9 months old, so he's getting to his park routine is pretty good right now. After you say park and they do, you're going to reward with a treat. Although eliminating their bladder is self-reinforcing, just like it is for people, where it feels good when your bladder is very full to empty your bladder, you're still going to do that reward with a treat, just to reinforce your puppy that that was the right thing to do. Don't allow sniffing or play until parking is complete. So a very common problem, people will say, my puppy just wants to sniff and fool around and they don't want to do anything, especially with the people that have fenced yards that do off-leash parking. And that's really, really common. So if you're keeping them on a leash, you can easily, then to our next one, redirect them to the park spot if they start to get distracted by things. Because remember, a puppy, this is the world is brand new to them, and they're going to be sniffing and exploring, and things taste good and they want to look at everything and put everything in their mouths. We're going to use our leash to keep them in the park area and allow some off-leash time as a reinforcement. My dogs also know that as soon as they pee, that's when we go on the walk, or that's when I unclip the leash and they can go play with each other. But we always park first. So parking while on an outing. This is very common with people to know, well, how do I do this when I'm out in public? Always, always, always remove your jacket or bandana before parking. This mimics what they would do with a harness, or what a guide dog user would do with their dog in harness, as well as an instructor, is that they would always take the harness off first before parking. So always take off your jacket and bandana and unclip the leash to full length. If for some reason you forget, does that mean your dog is going to be career changed? No. So I want you to just move past it. Oh, I forgot this time. Next time I'll be really diligent about taking off my jacket or bandana. So for myself, I know that my very, very first puppy outing that I went to with my very first puppy, I forgot to take off his bandana for parking. And I had been doing this for a long time and telling puppy raisers that's what they needed to do, and I forgot. So I want you to just kind of, and I'm still remembering this 9 puppies later, that was my first experience in parking in public. So just move on from it and try to go forward and say, well, I forgot that time. Next time I'm going to be a little bit more diligent. And I always try to park prior to activities begin. When activities begin, because that is actually what a GDMI will do, your guide dog mobility instructor will do with our dogs in training. They park the dogs and then they go out on route. They put the harness on and go out on route. You'll see around leader dog that there are lots of pea gravel areas. You'll see that in our downtown training building as well. There's a pea gravel area because they park first and then go on route, so they're not likely to park while they're walking. A lot of people will use a walk as a way to get their dog to park or go to have park time. I always park before leaving the yard, always. And it's a very rare event that once I'm on a walk with my dogs that they'll be distracted from me enough to have to go park. They always, since they do it before they leave. In fact, we get to the end of my driveway and that's become the park spot for they almost know they're going because I take them to a specific spot in the yard before we leave to park. So they're very, very good at that. And I think that dogs find this to be very easy for people to do once they get going with potty training. Can you use technology? Sure. There's tons of apps and things available. I personally used the puppy potty log with this puppy, and like I said, puppy training was not my forte. Potty training was not my forte at one time, where it was very difficult for the members of my family. I would say I was probably okay housebreaking puppies, members of my family who weren't. But you input the information into the app, and it sends you alerts and says, it'll say, uh-oh, future leader dog Henson needs to park in 10 minutes, and it gives you a little warning. And then you can kind of stay on track, and you input how many accidents you have, you input the times of day, you input whether you've fed them, whether they're eating or drinking. And so the app helps you to remember. If you're one of those people that's really busy and you get lost in your work easily, that would be something for you, because then you can easily, like I said, get an alert, and you don't even have to write it down. We're not even asking you to take a pen and paper. This is all just coming from your phone. And we all know that we all have phones this time of, in this age of technology. So this is something that could really help you if you're interested in it. Puppy Potty Log in the App Store. Accidents happen. You're going to have accidents. Like Sarah asked earlier today, what do you clean it up with? We never ever, those of you who are brand new, those of you who are old hats at this know this, but we never ever punish our puppies for parking in the house or pottying in the house. No rubbing our nose in it. That is a common one. That's the old school way. No yelling at them. You clean it up with an enzymatic cleaner. I use Nature's Miracle. I also use Odoban, which is a disinfectant. I've been very successful with one that's a Clorox product that's called Urine Remover. And I've had a lot of success in using those products for cleanup. And I have tile and hardwood, and those seem to use the best and be pretty safe on those materials. And puppy accidents are our fault. That means we weren't watching, we weren't paying attention, we weren't observing our puppy to know that he needed to park. Are there some accidents where really there is no telltale signs? Of course, but if we're diligent, we can get on and keep this on track. So parking on different surfaces. It's something that we want to do with our puppies. They're taught to park, again, like I said, on that verbal cue. So they're more likely, if you get that onto a verbal cue, they're more likely to park where we ask rather than where they want to. And it's a good practice to use different areas if you can. And I say that if you can because at first, of course, grass is going to be a really good way to get your puppies going outside, and that's mostly what you're going to use. A little harder for them, like this little terrier here, a little harder for them to park on concrete because it splashes up and it's not exactly comfortable. But if you're ever out at a puppy outing where there is no grass, you're going to need to have that skill. And that transfers over to a guide dog user. They're not always going to be near a grass patch to be able to park their dog before they do something. So it's important that they park on different surfaces. This other dog, the middle dog there, is parking on some pea gravel. We have pea gravel areas in leader dog. It drains very well. It's easy. You can actually disinfect it. I have a pea gravel park area thanks to my husband who hauls sand and gravel for a living and owns a gravel business. So pea gravel is something that he built for me so that we could have the dogs go to a park area. There is, I just put this little airport. A lot of airports now are having service dog park areas. You can see that's kind of AstroTurf. So your puppy may need to go on something like that. And you just never know during the course of your puppy raising where you'll be and what you'll be expected to do. So try to encourage your puppy to park on different surfaces while you're out and about. Of course, when you're first potty training, you're always going to that potty spot. But once your potty training progresses to where you're going to outings and you're doing things and you're becoming more reliable, you're going to want to try to park on different surfaces. So there's some troubleshooting that we can go through. One of the questions people frequently ask me is, what about using bells? Bells are fine. Nobody at Leader Dog has a problem with anyone using them if they're getting your puppy housebroken and that's how you're doing it. They may not understand. You may have a puppy that's very good at it. You may have a puppy that's not very good at that. I've had both. And it's still our responsibility to take them out to park. When you use bell training, you're putting a lot of responsibility on that dog to go to the bells to tell you that they need to park, rather than you saying, I need to observe my puppy and know when they're going to park and prevent them from parking in the house. So that's just a little bit about that. And not only that, not all clients will be able to know to have bells, to use bells. So we're always thinking about our end result when it comes to house training. House training is, guys, very, very important to our clients. This is a dog that has to live with someone who's blind or visually impaired, and it's important that they have this skill. That's one of the reasons we decided to have this little potty training talk, is just because of the importance in our dogs to our clients. Another question I'm frequently asked is, what about withholding water as a way to maybe get our puppies to not pee in the house? So withholding water might encourage your puppy to drink a ton when it's available, and what goes in must come out. So I find that if I reduce water from my dogs or only let them have a little bit at certain times, they tend to tank up on it. Like, I better hurry up and drink. I gotta hurry up and drink this whole bottle of water before they take it away from me again. And I don't want that to be an event in my dog's life. So I always just have water available for them. I personally keep water in my crates at night as well. That's not something that everybody does. That's to your own personal preference and to how well the housebreaking is going with your dogs. I have some picky poodles. My very picky poodle, if his mouth gets even the least bit dry in the middle of the night, he will wake me up to get a drink, not to park. He'll wake me up because he's thirsty. So I got in the habit of keeping water in their crates at night for them. And if you think picking up the dish at night, of course, is definitely acceptable. You can do that. Like I said, you can keep water in there or not, depending on the housebreaking level of your puppy. And if you think your puppy might be tanking up on water or drinking a ton, and you're struggling with that, try giving them some ice cubes. They can crunch on them, they can have them, they'll melt in a bowl, and your puppy can have the water like that. That will just kind of slow that ingestion down a little bit. Some other troubleshooting, some other issues people have, diarrhea. That is a huge issue. I struggled with diarrhea with my puppy before this one for a while before I called our vets. And from now on, and puppies get dehydrated very quickly. That's very easy for a baby puppy to get dehydrated to the point where they're going to need intravenous fluids. And we don't want to ever get to that point. You can call the Leader Dog vet for advice and counseling on dealing with loose stools. I put the number on here. Write it down if you don't have it. That's our 248 number. Maybe Melissa, if you can put the 1-800 number in the chat, if you get a minute, if you can think about that for everyone. But like I said, they can get dehydrated quickly. They can go downhill really quickly. If you're experiencing a problem, please call our vets and ask. That's what they're here for. That's what they want to help you to solve. Very embarrassingly, I will tell you that I thought maybe it was a behavior problem. My puppy was getting up in the middle of the night and having diarrhea. By the time we got around to morning time, it had firmed up again, and so I didn't think anything of it. And then back at night, we would have the same diarrhea problem. Finally, I asked Dr. Wilson, I said, look, I'm not getting any sleep here. This is killing me. And she said, well, let's take a stool sample. Let's see what's going on. Let me give you some meds to help you. And she did. And after that, I was able to sleep through the night again. So I really encourage you to see the vets. What the vets are going to ask you, they're going to ask you, according to the fecal scoring chart, approximately what your dog's stool looks like. And you can find this online. I know it's here. But your dog gets into that 6 or 7 range. That's pretty bad. And you definitely want to do something about it sooner rather than later. Some more troubleshooting. I take them outside and they come in and pee again. This one is really common. So you take your puppy out. If they don't park, you bring them back in, put them inside the crate for 5 or 10 minutes, come out and try again. That would be about the best way to do this. You're never going to leave your puppy unattended with free roam of the house either. So that's when the accidents happen. So if they haven't gone park outside, that would be the time where I would put them either into their crate for 10 minutes or their small enclosed area, again, so that we don't have an accident just anywhere in the house. Why do we say park? This is probably the most frequently asked question for brand new puppy raisers. And, you know, it really comes down to our clients. It comes down to what they're going to have to say when they're in public and what we say when we're in public. Not everybody wants to say pee or poop. Those aren't great words to come out of your mouth, and maybe that would be aversive to some clients to have to say that. So way back then, when somebody decided park was going to be the word, and you can see what it says backwards. And that's the joke I always tell everybody when they ask me about my future leader dog. It's one of the things I tell them, that park is what it means backwards. They always have to think about it for a second. But I hope that you guys got some good information out of this, and I would love to hear your questions.
Oh boy, Laura, we have a lot of
I figured there would be some, so I'm prepared.
There's a few, and I've been pretty busy in the chat room. Mark Felt, I do see that your hand is raised. I have a couple of questions before you, so I promise I'm going to leave your hand raised, and I will get back to you shortly. Let me just find my previous questions. One was with Kim Woolery, and I think you sort of addressed this. Kim, you can let us know if you want Laura to go more in depth, but Kim wants to know, is withholding water after 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening, will that help to not have the puppy awake at night, or is that a bad idea?
Now that could, depending on what times you park and depending on what your initial schedule is. I would say 6 or 7 is pretty early, to be honest with you. And like I said, I find that some puppies, could it be that they're waking because they're thirsty, or they wake up and they decide that they're thirsty? That could be an issue also. It depends. Are they peeing in the crate? If they're peeing in the crate, I would say that yes, maybe withholding some water at that time of the night. Or maybe at that time of the night is where you start the ice cubes, where they have some, but they're not able to tank up on it. I would go 6 to 7 is pretty early. Like I said, depending on what time you go to bed. So my dog's last park is 8 p.m. and then they're in bed again until 4:30 in the morning. So that gives them plenty of time in their crate at night. But my schedule is a little different than some people. If you park at 10, maybe 8 would be the last time you would do water. But I would keep it in that range of maybe a couple hours before bedtime.
So we have a lot of questions about the sequence of elimination and then marking and rewarding, and if you would mark and reward separately for urine and stool. Could you talk about that? Also, we had questions about if we need to mark every single time, reward every single time we mark as well.
So remember that when our puppy is going park, it is self-reinforcing. So it already feels good to them to go. You don't necessarily have to mark that behavior. You certainly can. You are welcome to do that. But we have to be careful. Are we marking the actual act of them going potty? Or are you marking the position that they're in? So you always have to be extremely observant with when you're marking those different behaviors. For me personally, that's why I don't mark that behavior. I definitely reinforce it, but I don't necessarily mark that. And that could be a personal preference. Melissa and Barry Lynn, if you have other things to say about that, but I personally will only reinforce that behavior. You can reinforce it with a treat, or you can reinforce it with petting and praise. You can reinforce it with allowing them to be off the leash, but you're definitely going to take them out and ask them for that verbal cue of go park. Melissa, I'm not sure if you want to chime in on that one. Do you mark or not mark?
Yeah, I was hoping not to answer that truthfully because there's a gray area. Sometimes I find that marking can startle a dog, and your excitement because they eliminated can actually get them to stop the flow of urine. So I'm also very, very cautious about overdoing it, just because I don't want to do anything that is going to startle. Let's say if we were in the bathroom and then somebody comes in and celebrates and jumps around, it would probably cause you to be a little frightened. And so I don't want to do that to our puppies as well. As you said, Laura, urinating and defecating is self-reinforcing. So sometimes I just let the act itself occur, and that's it.
Same. I feel very much the way that Melissa does. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page with that. Is that I find the same thing. I try to keep the act itself to be the reinforcement, although I will give treats for pottying. And it some of it does depend on the puppy. I would say if your puppy, if you're struggling with it, certainly you can look at the different aspects. But I also want to make sure that, you know, just like Melissa said, that we're getting it all out. We're eliminating fully before we go inside again. There are such things as some puppies are double peers. I had one of those as well, where he would go once and then he would walk a few steps, or maybe we'd get halfway back to the house and he would pee again. So I just knew, because I got to know my puppy, that he might go twice in a row. So I waited for that second time before bringing him inside.
Celeste Wilson, I know that you had a pretty in-depth question for Laura. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yeah, my question is, my puppy, she's older, she's 13 months, and she's always been very good with parking, but she's older, so she can hold it a while. So often we'll park before we go on our outing, and now that she's older, sometimes we'll be out, you know, half a day, and so I know she'll have to go, you know, halfway through while we're out, and she just will very rarely go while we're out, even if she's got a nice piece of grass to go on. But when I put her gear on and we go in the store or wherever we're going, she will hold it. She won't go in the store. But she has often held it for long periods of time. So I'm glad that she doesn't go in the store, but I didn't know if you had any thoughts. Should I be trying to work with her to get her to park away from our house more, or is it okay since she holds it?
If she was having accidents, I would be more concerned by the fact that she doesn't. Although you do want to try to get her to be comfortable in parking in different places. I experienced this with one puppy. It wasn't a future leader dog, thankfully, but it was one of my poodles, and she would not pee outside of that park area that we had for her. And it became very difficult but we really worked very hard on using that verbal cue. Make sure that you are giving her plenty of length of leash during that time period, and really do some encouraging of parking if you can. We really want them to get used to, like we said, parking before they go on a route, and that will likely happen when she goes back to leader dog. But I would encourage you to also speak with your vet and make sure that there's nothing physical preventing her from wanting to do that, and then trying to make her comfortable enough and relaxed enough to want to eliminate. She is going to have to do that when she returns to leader dog. It is going to be very important that she learns how. But like I said, I'm not as concerned because she's holding it. She's not having accidents somewhere, but we don't want her holding her urine to perpetuate into a problem down the road. So it's best to, like I said, encourage her to relax, encourage that pottying, maybe go farther away from the area that you plan to go in, the store you plan to go in, so that she's away from distractions, so that she can become comfortable enough to park somewhere that's not at home.
Laura, we have a question from Brad. This is about his 12-week-old puppy that always spills her water when she's had enough. He wants to know, should they leave the water out, or how should they solve this?
That's a great question. I actually came up with a way to have a bucket on the inside of my crate that we zip tie to the crate to prevent the dogs from tipping it over. So a lot of times they're actually buckets, they're stainless steel buckets that are made for crates, that are made for that type of thing. So look for products that might be helpful to you so that they can't tip it over. That would be something. You also can use a water bottle with a licket. And that's actually something your dog's going to be able to do at Leader Dog. They actually are fed with the automatic waterers. They're watered with the automatic waterers that they have to lick. They're taught that when they come back to the kennel. They work very hard. We have a specific employee that works with all of the dogs to make sure that they're using the liquor when they come back into the kennel. So you can look and invest in something like that, a water bottle that's made for dogs that might be fun for her to use, but then she won't spill the water.
Laura,
that's a great question, though.
Mark Felt has a question. Mark, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Melissa. I was wondering if you could maybe give us some direction. Most raisers take their dog into the yard. Puppies learn to pee on grass or poop on grass. Sure. They park there. I would always acknowledge the fact after they're done, I'd give them a pat on the head. But different surfaces, how can we introduce our puppy to concrete or asphalt or that AstroTurf that you said was at the airport? Those when we see that opportunity, how can we get our puppy then to park there? Because they're so used to doing it on grass.
Sure. So it comes with practice, Mark. It really does. Because even for me, Leader Dog has the pea gravel area in the front. Sometimes my dogs are more likely to park on the grass, so that's just what I choose. You can choose areas to park where maybe their front feet will be on grass, or their front feet will be on asphalt or concrete, and maybe where they pee will be grass, just to start to give them a different feel, to start to approximate to that area. Again, you're going to be using a verbal cue. So you're going to be, as soon as we can get them on that verbal cue, we're going to be able to be better and better at getting them to park on surfaces that they're not familiar with. I would say that it's going to be hard if that's all you've done is grass or pea gravel. It'll be hard, but your dog definitely can learn to do it if you're patient enough. Like I said, do some approximations. So start moving your puppy. I might take mine to my driveway, which is concrete. I might have their front feet on concrete when I ask them to park. So it's just going to be coming up with a good solution to approximate them to going finally fully on those areas.
Thank you. Well, that was a great answer.
Laura, we have a question that I'm sure you could probably bet that it was coming. And it can apply to lots of areas of dog training. Can dogs fake you out to get a treat? So are they asking to go out only to get a treat?
My answer is going to be yes to that one. I have seen dogs also squat and fake the peeing so that they could get something. So you really need to know your dog. And I'm sure that everybody will agree with me on that. My puppy no longer needs any reinforcement for going out to park. He will tell me when he needs to go out to park. He will whine or otherwise vocalize to me that he needs parking. He goes to the park area, and now it's not, I might say, good job, buddy. He might get a little pat on the head, but he doesn't get a big party every time now that he knows how to go. So I would suggest that. So it's not a big party once they're getting it. Just like we fade food lures, we're going to also fade the treats for parking as well. Eventually, we're eventually going to stop making a party. But yes, there are some dogs that can do that. But it's a matter of knowing your puppy and really knowing what the reinforcement is for them and what they're actually going for.
Angie Warlow asks, our future leader dog Kimber will go outside successfully, park, then come inside again and park again almost immediately after coming back inside, no matter how long we spend outside with her. I have watched her closely for signs that she shows to go outside. We've even timed it and had her go out every 15 minutes, and she still has quite a few accidents. A lot of times she won't even sniff before she squats to pee. Are there any tips for this?
Yes. So what I want you to do is I want you to take her immediately from going outside and put her immediately into the crate when you get back in. Especially if she's been very successful in her crate, you want her to always, always, always go into that crate. So you might even carry her at this point, because you're going to be limiting her opportunity to pee somewhere else. You're going to carry her in the house, put her in the crate, take her out in 5 minutes, and make sure she eliminates. Like I said, I had a dog that would be he was a double peer. He wanted to go twice, just like your puppy. So you really might want to take them in the house, carry them, and then carry them back outside again so they can't have the accident. That would be my recommendation for that.
This question is from Eileen. She wants to know if there's any suggestions for urine, and her future leader dog is 5 months old, stains or damage to the grass.
Ooh, damage to grass is one I'm not very knowledgeable about. I've never had a dog that did damage to the grass. I know that's sometimes it can be dietary, sometimes it's not. Melissa, do you have any feedback on that?
I do. It's not a fun, easy answer though.
Right.
It's water, and more water for your grass. So make sure that you're watering your grass daily, because typically you need to dilute the urine. That is what burns the grass. And so the more that you can dilute it, the better. Just like you have, Laura, at home, if you have an area of pea gravel or sand, obviously that prevents from burning your grass. You have to be really, really cautious that there are not any supplements that you're giving your dog that are over the counter to change the acidity of their urine. There are a lot of products that market for not burning the grass, and you just want to stay away from those. Also check with your vet just to make sure that the concentration of their urine is appropriate for what it should be on a daily basis.
It's interesting that is a and thank you, Melissa. When you haven't had to experience that grass, the burning of the grass, you tend to not be as knowledgeable about that area. I know I've not personally had to do that, and like I said, I have now I have a pea gravel area, so thankfully I don't have to deal with that.
We have another question. A 8 to 9 week old puppy is very food driven. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a question in addition to the going outside just to get food. My apologies for the confusion.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, if your puppy, especially if they're food motivated, though.
Another question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think we might have gotten all the questions.
Yay! That means some of them may have been answered during the presentation, which is good. I'm thankful for that. Any other questions I can help you with?
Just kidding. I found one.
Okay, good.
I found another one. Is it common for females to urinate more often out of females in heat?
It depends. Again, that's really dog dependent. I raise male dogs, as most of you know anyway, that I always have males, but I don't ever have a problem with them marking. Some females also do marking. So that really is dependent on your dog. It really depends on them personally. So I wouldn't say that it's more common or less common. I would say watch your dog, know their behaviors, and because a lot of times, just like anything else, just like eating does, it's always an indication of something. If your dog maybe stops urinating or starts urinating when they hadn't before, then you have to look at things and how to troubleshoot those specific problems you may be experiencing. And but girls can mark too, just so you know.
I don't know if I'm going to say the name correctly, but it's a detailed question. Akiando?
It's Econdio.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you want to unmute yourself, you can explore your question.
Okay, it's Econdio. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you for all the information today, Laura and Michelle. You guys' help. It's been really helpful for me. My puppy he'll be 2 months on the 4th. And so my question is basically, I know you mentioned earlier about schedules and sleeping. And so I've been trying to keep my puppy on schedule, but it's that aspect that you don't want to wake him while he's sleeping. And so I'm sometimes frightful about, like, you know, waking him to eat, and then I want him to go back to, you know, he wants to go back to sleep. So I just, you know, do you have any recommendations with that, especially as you said, with regards to parking and just getting that all in and allowing them to sleep?
Yes. So it's okay to skip things with your puppy if they're sleeping. If they're sleeping, that really is a time when you want them to get that rest. If you are, you know, your schedule can be, because they're animals, it's not incredibly rigid. Your schedule would be flexible depending on your puppy's habits. Some of them can honestly hold it. Some of them 1 hour that we recommend, we say in the beginning, you're going to be starting out 1 hour every hour they need to go out. To be honest with you, some puppies can go longer than that. But I would not wake your puppy up to go, especially in the middle of the night. That would be a time where I would let them sleep for sure. If you're afraid that they're sleeping too close to bedtime at night, you may want to get them up. You may want to encourage some parking before bedtime, but really it depends on the time of day as well. I'd be more likely to do that in the evening than I would during the day, to get them up to want to go. But does he have his days and nights confused? Is he waking up tons during the night and not enough during the day?
I think you hit it on the nail when you said that he gets he's more so active in the evening, and he sleeps, and so it's kind of like, I think that that's jarring his, you know, messing up his sleeping schedule in the evening, because he's sleeping a lot he sleeps a little bit more afternoon, late evenings, and then he's kind of like ready to be up in the nighttime and not ready to go to sleep. So yeah.
So you may want to just do kind of maybe some activity in the evening where you do wake him up. Maybe you do a little bit of training at that time so that you can kind of tire his brain out, maybe move his feedings a little bit so that he's awake a little bit more during that evening time. But puppies do sleep a lot. So remember that it's only if he would be getting up in the middle of the night frequently that I would worry about that. If he's starting to sleep through the night, or you're getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep at night, then I would be less worried about it.
Thank you.
So we have a last call for questions. If anybody has a question for Laura. And of course, you can either unmute your microphone and ask a question, or type one in the chat room.
Well, thank you guys. I'm happy to have been able to help a little bit. I hope I've helped some, and given you some hope that it doesn't last forever. Potty training doesn't. It's a very small window in your puppy's life to what you give to someone. They're a potential guide dog for someone for 8 to 10 years. When you think of this little hardship of 6 months of potty training, maybe, it really is, it's worth it in the end. So I would encourage you to, if you have problems, to talk to your puppy counselor or to seek out some help from puppy development. One of the coordinators, myself, Melissa, Barry Lynn, or VJ. VJ's on the road tonight, I know, but Melissa would be happy to help. Barry Lynn would be happy to help. We'd be happy to give you suggestions. The one thing I do want you to do is, if you're experiencing extreme problems, I want you to also consult our veterinary team so that they have a good idea that you're experiencing these problems. I've had the vet, before I've done anything, I ask the vet to check my urine, on my puppy's urine, just to make sure that, okay, it might be a behavioral problem that I need to work through. My puppy started peeing before we got outside. And he did that several days in a row, where we would get just to the door and he would pee. And I was a little concerned that maybe this was because I wasn't taking him out fast enough, or was it because he couldn't hold it because there was a physical problem. So I had the vets check his urine. There was no physical problem. Dr. Wilson said, nope, his urine is all clear. You should be ready to go. She said, maybe you just aren't fast enough at opening the door. And sure enough, that problem went away in a couple of days when I started opening the door a little quicker and getting on it a little quicker, when he was telling me that he had to go. So part of it was me saying, hang on a second. I have to finish up this virtual training session with puppy raisers. I can't take you out right now. So some of it was me. But we were able to solve it pretty quickly. But like I said, I had a vet check just in case.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm just checking through the chat room to make sure that we didn't miss anyone. I think we have everyone. Wonderful questions, everyone, and wonderful
Great
responses,
questions.
Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I want you guys to have an excellent 4th of July. Of course, we've got another one coming up. You can pretty much count on our puppy raiser trainings to be Tuesdays at 5 p.m. and Thursdays at noon. So if you have any questions in between there, please let us know. But happy 4th of July from me. Enjoy your week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Laura, I got a question if I could ask you and Melissa when everybody talked. Or
Sure.
left people on. Down to 12, 11. Okay, when we had the guide dog mobility instructor team meeting, someone asked how does a blind person clean up when the dog parks, and he says that they feel the back of the dog, it's curved or it's straight, depending on if they're urinating or defecating. We as raisers don't get involved in doing anything like that. That's something the mobility instructors then teach the dog while they're in school.
Well, there really isn't a lot of teaching. That's just how the blind person would tell. And so we don't really need to do any of that.
Okay.
We don't